Welcome to Timber Frame Design using SketchUp Part 6. In this tutorial, we will learn how to draw braces and flip components in unique ways. So this is the model we are working from. You'll notice I have a number of braces. I'll go to X-ray view so that you can see the joinery on the braces. So these braces have a 1-inch housing, a 3-inch tenon. This shoulder is 1.5 inches, and the tenon is 1.5 inches. These braces are 5 inches this way and 3 inches that way. So I'll go out of X-ray. And so this brace and this brace are interchangeable, and they're also the same as these two rear wall braces, and then the braces on the opposing side. As it turns out, they are the same dimensions as these front braces, but these will need to be drawn separately. And then these ridge braces are a little bit different because I needed to avoid conflicting joinery, so I couldn't go 2-foot rise and run here because it would interfere with this joinery. So I typically try to make as many braces interchangeable as possible. And instead of drawing each brace individually, I plan on showing you how to draw one and then how to move it, how to copy it and then move it to other locations. So we're going to go to this model, which is the same thing but without those 6 braces, 2 here, 2 in the back wall, and 2 over here. By the way, the tools we will be using in this tutorial are the tape measure tool, the line tool, which we haven't used yet, the rectangle tool, the push-pull tool, the move copy tool, and we're also going to be using a tool that you only will have if you downloaded Clark Bremer's extension for it, and it's called Rotate 90 Degrees. As far as I know, that's not part of the suite of things under the timber framing extensions download. So this would be a separate download for a specific tool that can be found in the same location you found Clark Bremer's timber framing extensions. You just go down in the bottom right corner and look at things. I think it's listed as other by this creator or something like that. But that's explained in the first tutorial. So let's get after it. Typically, I try to make my braces have an equal rise and run, and then all the angles involved are going to be 45 degrees and 90 degrees or 135, right, which would be the supplement of 45 degrees. So it just makes the layout more simple. You can lay things out with a speed square rather than using a protractor square or something like that. There are times when you have different rise and run, and that would require different angles. But whenever possible, I try to have an equal rise and run because it is the strongest brace, but also is the easiest to draw and the easiest to cut. So I'm going to come over here and grab my tape measure tool, and I'm going to come to this edge here, click on it once and let up, and then I'm going to drag along this edge. And I'm going to type in 2 feet, and you'll see that puts a guideline there. One of the really important skills in this tutorial is simply using guidelines to locate components or to kind of identify where those components are going to go. So this is our 2-foot run. Now we need a 2-foot rise, which actually we're going to pull down. So I'm going to grab this, click once, and then slide along here. As long as I see that blue arrow, that means I'm in the vertical plane. I'm going to type 2 feet again and enter. So you'll see that I have these connection points here. I'm now going to use the tape measure tool, and it's again very important that you wait till you get the X at the intersection. So I'm going to hover there. There I have the X. I'm going to click it once and let up. This is a left click. And I'm going to slide my mouse down till I get that X. It's so important you have the X. Then I'm going to hold it steady and click once again. So now I've created a guide that is in the position I want my brace. Now I'm going to just click on that line and let up. And I want to drag in this direction. But to make sure it's on the right plane, I'm actually going to hover over this face. Because as long as I'm on a face in the same plane, It could be this face over here. That's fine. I just want to be on a face in the same plane. If I come over here, it's not going to be on the same plane. You'll see that the dashed line does not cross that tie beam right here. But once I get on that plane, it's back there. So that's where I want it. So I'm just going to hover over it and let up, and then I'm going to type 5 inches because my braces are going to be 3x5 stock. So now I have kind of a pattern to follow for my brace. And I'm going to come up to the line tool, which I don't believe we've used yet in these tutorials. I'm going to come here, make sure I get the X, click once, let up, and then come down to this X, click once, and come down to this X, click once, and let up. Then I'm going to come up here, click once and let up, and then I need to close it. Boom. You'll see how that went gray shading. That means that is all on the same plane and it's closed. If you don't get that, then that means some guideline somewhere is not on the right plane. So that is a flat 3x5 area. I'm going to rotate around. I'm just holding my mouse, my wheel down and then moving the mouse around till I can come to this face. I'm going to go to my push-pull tool, click it once. Notice how when I go over that, boom, it makes that little polka dot pattern. I'm going to hold down left mouse and pull toward me and then let up. And I'm going to type 3 inches and enter because my brace is 3x5 stock. So now I'm going to kind of come back around here and I've created the main part of that brace, but there's no joinery there. So I'm going to get rid of these lines just because they're in the way all the time, it seems. I'm not going to get rid of this one because I'm going to use that line over here when I do this other brace. But for now, I need to pull this brace out and put the joinery on the ends. So I'm going to use my Move Copy tool, click it once, hover over that. Oops, notice what happened. What did I forget? I forgot to make that a component. I'm rushing. I'm going to go back to my Select tool. It's so easy to forget to make it into components. So I'm going to triple click this, then right click, then make component. I'm going to call it 2x2 brace. That gives me an idea that it's a 2-foot rise and a 2-foot run. Now, because I'm not doing joinery yet, I don't need to glue to anything. I don't need to set the axes. I just need to create it. Boom. And it is slow, but it's created. So now you see this outline. That means it's a component. So I'm going to click outside there. I'm going to go to my Move Copy tool, click it once, hover over it, hit Control because I want to, and you'll see the plus sign show up because I want to make a copy. I'm just going to drag it out here into space. Doesn't matter where, just somewhere where it's not being hidden or mixed up in the main part of the frame. I'm going to go back to my Select tool. I'm going to hold my wheel down and then just pivot things around. I want to look at this face right here. And this takes a little bit of practice of zooming in and getting in the right direction. So here's where I want to add my joint. It's going to be a 1-inch housing and a 3-inch tenon. So the mortise depth is going to be 4 inches. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool, click it once. Now notice I have not opened this component. It's a closed component. So to do this, I'm going to click in this corner once and let up. And then I'm going to, actually you have to click and hold down till you get to that corner and that close that up. And I'm going to use push-pull and I'm going to drag it up 1 inch. Now this is really important and actually very beneficial. You'll notice that it didn't stretch it along the length of the brace. It extrudes it on perpendicular to the plane you're dragging. So I want to drag it up, so it's going to drag it straight up from that plane, which is how we want it. We'll trim this extra stuff off after a bit. So next thing I'm going to do, I still haven't opened any component. I'm going to use my tape measure tool. I'm going to find that midpoint, click it once and let up, and then I'm going to drag along this till I get the midpoint and click it. Now I went with the midpoint because my tenon is going to be 1.5 inches and this is a 3-inch brace, so it works out perfectly. If I was doing a 4x6 brace and I still wanted 1.5 inches tenon, I wouldn't be able to use the midpoint. I'd actually have to enter that in. So now that I have that dashed line, I can come up here with my line tool, find the X, click once, and then slide along, find the X, click again. Now I can use my push-pull tool, And this is the inside half, which is where I want the tenon to be. I don't want the tenon to be here because then it'd be flush with the outside face of the timber it's joining. So I'm going to grab this and pull up 3 and then take 3 inches. So now I need to trim this off because the wood follows this plane and wouldn't extend there. So to do that, I'm going to use the tape measure tool again. I'm going to grab this edge, click it once, and then slide it somewhere else along it, maybe even to this intersection. Click once again. That gives me a guideline where I want it. I'm now going to go up to the line tool. I'm going to click here and then find my X right there, click again. So now what I do is I take my push-pull tool. Instead of dragging something out, I'm going to push it in. So you'll notice I'm just getting that polka dot pattern on that little section, and I slide in and it'll snap to where it's going to be. Now I can take my tape measure tool, grab that guideline, and again, I mentioned this in a previous tutorial. I don't grab my guidelines in here. I like come out in space. That way I can be sure I'm grabbing what I want, in this case the guideline. If I'm in here, it might click to some other line. I'm going to grab this, click once, and then just move my mouse, find that spot, click again. That transfers that guideline to there. It's on the same plane. Find my X, click it, come to push-pull, push that out. Now I've got to come in and clean this up. I'm going to go back to select, and I'm not going to delete guides all because that would delete some guides down here that I want. So I'm just going to click on this guide and hit delete, click on that guide and hit delete, click on that guide and hit delete. You'll notice I have this one little line here, and I like to keep things clean. So I'm just going to click that and delete, and I have drawn my housing and tenon on the end of that brace. I now need to make it a component. So with my select tool, I'm going to left click 3 times. Then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say make component. I'm going to call it 2x2 brace top tenon. You could call it whatever you want, but it has to be a different name than the brace itself. For instance, we couldn't have just said 2x2 brace. I need to come up here and I need to click any, set component axis, and I'll click here and then click here and then kind of tip it till boom. That's the plane I want. And then I create. Now remember, we have to go through the paste in place function. So the next step is to edit cut. Now I need to triple click the brace to open it, and then I need to go edit paste in place. And I'm going to hover over that, and I'm going to right click and TF create joint. What that does is, you'll notice now it's not only created the tenon, but it's already automatically created a matching mortise in this tie beam, so I don't have to go through the trouble of drawing mortises. So we've done one end. Now we need to do the bottom. Now there are shortcuts to this. You could pull up this component and you could rotate it and paste it here, but let's just practice some more. I'm going to go here with my rectangle tool. Again, I now do not have this component open. I'm just drawing on what's existing. I can come down in here to this corner, and then I can drag, let up and drag diagonally and click that. Come to my push-pull tool, pull it this way, 1-inch housing. Now some of you might want to just draw just the tenon, and that's fine. But even if you draw just the tenon, you still need to start by putting that rectangle over the end of the brace. Even if you don't extrude it that inch, in order to draw just a tenon without a housing, you still need to put that larger rectangle on there. Now I'm going to take my tape measure tool, find the midpoint, click it once, let up. Find my midpoint, click it once, let up. Grab my line tool, find the X, boom. Slide down, X, boom. Going to push, pull. Again, I want it on the inside face, so it's going to be the same face as the upper one. Start dragging that out, type 3 inches. Now I need to trim this thing up. So I'm going to get rid of this guide just because guides drive me crazy. I'm going to take tape measure tool, click here, click there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, use my line tool, click here and then here. Now I'm going to use my push-pull tool. Now remember, you got to be careful. Make sure you've got the polka dots on just what you want to push. And then I need to transfer that guideline. And I'm going to grab it down here in space. And that's where I want it now. Click, use my line tool, make this line and come down here. I'm simply going to push that out of the way. Got to come up here, push that out of the way. I'm going to get rid of some of these guidelines. Oh, here's another trick. So if I start to the right of it, hold my left mouse down and drag over, you'll notice, okay, that's not working. Well, we'll just click it and delete it. And then I want to come up here and get just that little blue strip and get rid of that. Now I find it's much easier to, when you're making this a component, because you need to set the axis, I find it much easier to do it on the square corner rather than try to do it up here. It can be done up here, but I just prefer down at the bottom. So I'm going to triple click that tenon, right click, make component. I'll call it 2x2 brace bottom tenon. I need to go glue to any. I need to set my component axis. So if I start here, and then I click here, and then I bring it up here, now it's set it on that plane. That's the plane I want. So I'm going to say create. Well, we're going to call it that, yes. It's because I had opened this previously and practiced. So now I'm going to come up here to edit, cut, triple click, and then edit, paste in place. And I'm going to hover over it, right click, TF create joint. And that is good to go. So let's go look at our model. Because remember, that was a copy. So whatever changed out here, it's going to update here. I'm going to get rid of this because I don't need it anymore. We'll switch back to X-ray view. You'll see those tenons are in fact there. So here's where things get much more convenient. And it helps to really have a plan in place, knowing where your braces are going to go instead of drawing a whole bunch of different ones. So I'm actually going to come back to this and I'm going to use my paint bucket tool. I'm going to triple click to open that. Let's get outside there. And then I'm going to click that face. I'm going to come up to my paint bucket tool. Just follow me. It's going to make sense here in a little bit. I'll grab yellow and I'll paste that face, or I'll paint that face yellow. I'm going to now come up here and I now want to paste this upper face, or I want to give it a certain color. So I'm going to just pick another color and put that there. Again, this will all make sense in just a few moments. I have not done anything on the inner face or the under face. I just colored the outer and the top. Click out here. Now remember, I have my 2-foot guideline here. Let's pull a 2-foot guideline from here because the next brace is going to want to be 2 foot in that direction. So I could use my move copy tool and I could grab this, zoom it in a little bit. I could grab this, hit control because I need to make a copy, and then drag it along and it would snap to that spot. Boom, you'll see it snap there. But now it's not in the right rotation. So I'm going to hover over it and I'm going to right click and then I'm going to do flip along. And let me zoom out a little bit here so you can see, oops, it's doing crazy things. Got to move that. Well, I'll just put it out here. I want to zoom out so you see the axes. This is the green axis, this is the blue axis, this is the red axis. And you can flip along all of those. Let's see what happens. If I right click and then I go flip along components red, you'll see it spun it, it flipped it along this red axis. We don't want that. So let's undo that. We could try to flip along the blue, but let's go green because really what we want to do is rotate it along that green axis. So let's flip along components green and you'll see it's now in the right orientation. And now I can grab this corner, not the housing. I want this corner to line up with that mark. And we are good to go. Now you might ask, Why did I bother doing that? Why did I bother painting faces? Because if I had done this incorrectly, the tenon could have ended up on the outside face, and I want it to be exactly how the other one is. This is why it's helpful to paint those faces so you can make sure that it's going in the proper orientation. So we could simply bring these braces along this back wall, but those are 90 degrees offset because it's around the corner. So it's not as easy to do that using the flip along axes thing. The other way that this can be done, let me grab this, just making a copy. And one thing you can use is this tool over here, which is rotate. This really takes some time to get used to. You can grab here. Now notice I want to rotate it along the blue axis. So I could click here, and then I could click here and let up, and then I could spin it like that. That's one way, and you'll see down in the bottom right corner it says 90 degrees. That's fine. I could have done that, and that would have been all swell. The only problem is it's really difficult to get that exactly at 90 degrees. Sure, you could type 90 degrees, but it's a little tricky. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to show you a better option. And this is using that tool that you can download from Clark Bremer. So if I click it once and then I right click, you'll see this tool rotate 90 degrees. And so if I rotate 90 degrees along green, nope, that's not what I want. So I'm going to undo it. If I rotate 90 degrees around red, nope, that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to undo that. So if I rotate 90 degrees around blue, then you see that I have it. It's now 90 degrees from that. But remember, I want the yellow face out. I want the red to the top like I have. But if I tried to paste this in here, then this tenon is going to be flush with the outside face. So I can hover over that and I can go flip along components red, and it's put it in the right position. So it's hanging out here in space right now. I'm going to identify where I want it to go. I'm going to click here once and then slide along here and type 2 feet and enter. I'm going to grab this edge, slide it along here, type 2 feet, enter. And it's a little tricky because that overhangs. I'm now going to use my move copy tool, grab that corner, not the housing, but where the color intersects. And I'm going to try to, and this becomes a little bit tricky because you got to move it closer to the thing, so it requires a little bit of patience, but you'll get the hang of it. So once I have it there, I'm just going to slide it along there, and it's going to snap to that position. So here's the beautiful thing. Because I put joinery on this one, it automatically made matching mortises here and down here. And because I made a copy of this, it automatically put matching mortises here and here. I didn't have to redraw any joinery. Because I'm using copies of the original, it now automatically puts joinery here and here. Now I don't have to keep using the original because they're all copies. So anything I change to one, I'm changing to all. So our next brace has to be over here. Slide along that, type 2 foot. I don't need to do this one because it's already there. Now I can simply come up to this one, use my move copy tool, click control, so I'm actually copying, just not moving. Now I can flip along components red, I believe. Let's see. Nope. I'm going to undo that. Flip along components green. That's what I wanted. Then I'm going to grab this again, just going to slide it along there till it snaps to that spot. And the back wall is done. Now I could go through that whole rotate 90 degrees thing by pulling one of these over here, but it's just as easy for me to come back here. Let me get rid of some of these guides. They're kind of in the way. Guides will drive you crazy. They're very helpful, but mess with your mind. We don't want that. Life's too hard. No one wants to cry anymore. So I'm going to come over here and grab this, use my control to make a copy, and drag it over here, rotate my model, and just keep dragging. Again, there's more than one way to do this. It's like a geometry proof. So some of you out there, don't hate on me and say, why aren't you doing it this way? Because y'all got your own ways. So I'm going to now hover over it, right click, flip along, components red, and that's the way I want it. I've got to come in here and draw my guidelines. So helpful to use these guidelines to locate where you want things. So again, I'm just going 2 feet down, 2 feet up. So all my angles stay 45 degrees and 90 degrees because it's equal rise and run. So now I want to grab this little spot, not the housing. I want to grab here, but I've got to use my move copy tool. Grab that sucker and I bring it right over here and I find that thing and I try to drag it in till it snaps. And there it is. And you'll see it's in plane. Now I can use, whoops, let's do that again. And this will drive you nuts too. Sometimes if you don't click it, I'm going to come back to my select tool. So now that's in there. So let's move copy that again. I'm going to grab it here. I'm going to click Control so I make a copy. Drag this around here. I'll go past it a little bit. I'm now going to right click, flip along, components green, because here's my green axis. I wanted to flip it this way. So I come back here. I don't need to click plus again because I'm not making a copy. I'm just moving it where I want it, and it's snapping in place. There it is. So we've added 6 braces and only had to draw one of them. And we never had to draw any of the matching mortises because when you use the TF Create joint, it automatically does it. So let's shift to X-ray view. And there you have it. And you can see it's always so important to go back in and double check to make sure your tenons are in the right place. But I'm telling you, if we hadn't painted those, that top edge and the outer edge, there are times when it would look like it's in the right rotation, but it's not. So you could then go back in and I could click this and I could go with click that one face and I could go with my paint bucket tool and I could come back and find the white, click it, and then click that face. And because they're all copies of each other, I only need to do it to one. And so we'll go white here, click there. That's the beauty of this. You'll get so much better at this as time goes by in figuring out how to identify the locations of your braces, etc., so that you only need to draw one. I want to take just a moment and show you something that's particularly odd and is going to drive you crazy. So this model is kind of a funky thing. I've got this tilted front section. And so even though these braces, I drew them with curves. We didn't do curves on here because that's going to be covered with siding and it wouldn't make any sense to make it decorative. But it's still a 2-foot rise and 2-foot run brace. So I could have used that. The only problem is it's really tricky to rotate that into that plane. So we would draw them individually. So I'm actually going to delete this. And I'm only showing you this because it will drive you crazy. So I can still go with I want to be 2 feet from here. And then I want to be 2 feet along here. And I want to connect those points. Make sure I get the X. And connect it. I'm going to kind of rotate so I know what I'm looking at. Trying not to get confused. This is a ridge brace. So now I'm going to grab this out here in space and I'm going to go along this face, not out here in space, not here, not back here. I want that dash line across that face. So I'm going to type 5 inches. Now I'm going to use my line tool. Get that X, get that X, get that X, get that X, and that X. That's close that. Now I'm going to rotate this whole thing around. This is kind of tough to do, but I got skills. I'm going to drag this 3 inches. So Oh, by the way, this tool right here, sometimes you get lost inside a beam and you're rolling your mouse. You're like, where is everything? If you come up to this zoom extents button, click it. It just automatically like puts you back into some place where you can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to use my select tool and I'm going to get rid of those guides because they just bother me when they're in the way. I got enough problems. So I'm going to grab this. Oh no, actually I need to make it a component. So let's come in there. Let's triple click it. Make component. I'm going to call it front slope 2x2 brace. Doesn't matter what the name is. And create. So now I'm going to click outside. I'm going to make a copy of that. Control to get the copy and pull it out here. And this is what's going to drive you crazy. I can no longer use my rectangle tool to draw on the end of that. You see how it's, zoom in. It wants to go upward. It wants to give me a diagonal above because it wants to put it horizontal, and because this brace is kind of rotated in relation to the frame, so it won't let me do that. So the easy solution to that is instead of using the rectangle, I use my line tool, and then I just draw a line around the perimeter. Click once, let up. Click once, let up. Click once, let up. Click once, let up. Now watch when I do this final one. See how that changed that shade? That means I've actually drawn a rectangle by using lines. I'm going to use my push-pull tool. I'm going to go 1 inch, and then everything else is the same. I would just, mark out my center line, find a midpoint, find another midpoint, use my line tool, draw that, use my push-pull, pull this up 3 inches, and then, you can, right, you get the idea. I think you could take it from here. Trying to make the videos not last for hours. But just wanted to show you if you ever have a situation like that where it's rotated so it's not either flat horizontal or straight up perpendicular, or vertical rather, then you simply use the line tool to draw that box around the end. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Hope to put it up soon. And as always, please click subscribe to this channel so that you get more of these tutorials in the future. And we hope things are going well for you. Please do not hesitate to send me a message if you have questions that maybe I could help you out with.